Imagine you're sitting by the Mississippi River.
Suddenly, the water slows down, stops, and then starts rushing backwards.
Boats spin around, fish are totally confused, and every city downstream is now upstream. Sounds crazy, right? Well, what if this happened not just to the Mississippi, but to every single river on Earth?
That's today's question. What if all the rivers on Earth suddenly started flowing in the opposite direction? We're not talking about tiny little backflows during floods or when the tide pushes an estuary backward. No, this is a full-scale, worldwide, permanent reversal. From the Nile to the Amazon to the Ganges, water just decides, nope, we're going the other way.
To pull this off, we'll pretend some magical hand rewires the laws of gravity and topography, just enough to flip every river. Mountains don't move, oceans don't vanish. The rivers themselves just reverse course. So, what happens? First, every boat captain in the world would freak out. Barges that normally cruise downstream would suddenly be fighting uphill currents. Shipping schedules? Gone. River ports? Flooded or dried out. Fish migrations would collapse instantly. Salmon that spend their lives swimming upstream to spawn would now be going downstream forever. Their entire life cycle wrecked. Imagine a fish saying, "Sorry kids, Dad got carried to the ocean instead of making it home." Hydroelectric dams? Yeah, those would stop working overnight. They rely on water flowing in one direction. If the flow reverses, turbines spin the wrong way or stop altogether. Imagine entire cities suddenly without power because their rivers pulled a U-turn. Okay, let's zoom out. Rivers flow downhill because of gravity, right? Mountains high, oceans low. If rivers go in reverse, that means water's climbing uphill, which is impossible under normal physics. So for this to work, we'd need a total cheat code in nature. Let's pretend gravity still pulls down, but rivers ignore it. That means the Mississippi now flows from the Gulf of Mexico to Minnesota, which means salty ocean water is now getting shoved inland. Louisiana? Gone. New Orleans? Underwater. The Midwest? Slowly becoming a giant swamp of seawater. The Nile? Instead of feeding into the Mediterranean, it would start dragging salty water into Central Africa. Ancient cities like Cairo and Alexandria? Flooded by Mediterranean backwash. The Sahara Desert might even get wetter as the reverse Nile carries water inland. Cool for camels, bad for people. The Amazon? Normally, it dumps fresh water into the Atlantic, more than any other river on Earth. But if reversed, the Atlantic Ocean would invade South America. Millions of square miles of rainforest could drown in salt water. Trees and animals there wouldn't last long. Imagine dolphins happily swimming where jaguars used to hunt.
Rivers aren't just pretty blue lines on a map. They're part of Earth's plumbing system. They drain rainwater, carry sediments, and keep climates stable.
Reverse them, and rainfall patterns collapse. Floodplains that normally soak up extra water would start drying out on one side and drowning on the other. Crops that depend on predictable irrigation, rice in Asia, wheat in North America, maize in Africa, would fail within a single growing season. Global food shortages would hit fast. Meanwhile, coastal cities get salty surprise visits from rivers dragging seawater inland. Salt ruins farmland, contaminates drinking water, and wrecks ecosystems. A reversed Ganges would drag Bay of Bengal saltwater straight into the heart of India and Bangladesh. That's hundreds of millions of people facing a freshwater crisis. Animals? Done for. Freshwater fish can't survive in salty seawater.
Reversing rivers basically creates giant conveyor belts of salt water pushing inland. Wetlands like the Florida Everglades or the Okavango Delta in Botswana would flip into salty lagoons.
Migratory birds that depend on them would vanish too.
Entire ecosystems collapse like dominoes.
Human civilization was built around rivers. They gave us drinking water, food, transport, and fertile soil. Flip them around, and those same rivers destroy our cities.
Take the Thames in London. Instead of draining rainwater into the sea, it would shove seawater up through the city. London floods.
The Seine in Paris, same deal, flooded. The Yangtze in China? Instead of feeding Shanghai, it would drown inland provinces. Basically, the world's greatest cities, all those built at river mouths, would either become uninhabitable or require mind-boggling engineering just to survive. Imagine every coastal nation scrambling to build gigantic barriers to keep the oceans from marching inland along every reversed river. That's billions of dollars every single year just to not drown. So let's say humanity somehow adapts. We build walls, desalination plants, maybe even reroute artificial channels.
What does Earth look like a century later? For one, oceans would be gaining way less fresh water. That means global salinity levels go up.
Ocean circulation, which depends on delicate salt balance, would change. Currents like the Gulf Stream might weaken or vanish.
That could plunge Europe into colder winters, while other parts of the world roast.
Meanwhile, inland areas get wetter, but not in a good way. Rivers constantly dragging seawater inland would create giant salty lakes in the middle of continents. Imagine Kansas with a salty inland sea. Or the Congo Basin becoming a brackish swamp bigger than most countries.
Human life would retreat away from rivers, which is ironic since for 10,000 years we've been clustering around them. Cities might move uphill, abandoning coastlines.
Agriculture would have to reinvent itself with salt-tolerant crops.
Here's the twist. If rivers flowed backward permanently, Earth might slowly become unrecognizable. Saltwater invasions would keep creeping inland until half the continents turned into shallow inland seas.
And here's the wildest part. Eventually, those backward rivers would carve new valleys and erode landscapes in reverse.
Over millions of years, mountains might get reshaped, continents might flood, and the geography of Earth would be rewritten. The Amazon basin might literally connect the Atlantic Ocean with the Andes, slicing South America in half.
In other words, flip the rivers, and you don't just wreck human civilization, you rewrite the planet itself. So, what if all rivers flowed backward? At first, it's chaos. Floods, blackouts, dead fish.
Then it's worse. Collapsing ecosystems, ruined cities, food shortages. Over centuries, salt water eats its way inland, turning our continents into broken archipelagos.
Earth becomes a very different world, one that humans might not be around to see. So, what do you think? Would humanity figure out a clever way to survive rivers flowing backward? Or would we all get washed away by salty inland seas? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this little brain-bending journey, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next What If. Thanks for watching, and may your local river always keep flowing the right way.